Hey guys, welcome back to the biggest agricultural platform in Namibia known as Nduna Ngombe, which means headman of cattle. My name, of course, Mitchell Mutumba Simata, aka the headman of cattle. So today on the 20th of Feb, 20th Feb, which is a Monday, happy Monday to everybody, happy new week. I want to talk about an article I saw in the Namibian, which was an article where they were reporting on, believe the gentleman is the no, sorry, Swapo Youth League Secretary, not Secretary General, just Secretary, Mr. Ne Congo. So he was speaking at I believe it was a youth league event in the Oshana region on Saturday, where he said some quite interesting stuff surrounding the agricultural sector. So I just highlighted, I bullet pointed some key points that he made. So one word he said was, "We don't have land," such as he was talking, and one of the keywords he says, "We black people, we don't have land." And he went on to say, trying to close Mitco, black farmers are unable to sell cattle to Mitco because of the veterinary corridor. Youth will start demanding land. Um, Establishing a new private meat supplying company is an attempt to kill Mitco. Black sellouts being used as a front for real owners of the company. The land is ours and not theirs. Private meat company, black people are not poor because they cannot think, but because they don't have land. So let me go piece by piece, and I'll be touching on the things he said. So we don't have land. We as black people have land. We sit on land, particularly those ones that are also in the communal areas, whether you're in the north, south, west, east, you're sitting on a communal area. The issue with that is that land is not your land. It's state owned. It's state land, meaning it's owned by the government. It's the land of the Republic of Namibia. You are not allowed to own it. This is why you would see that in most communal areas, you will every time read an article or hear stories where land grabbing happened or there have been altercations. I can use myself as a good example. My family had altercations with other people because of land, because some of the lands of their grandparents or their grandfather's land, which they were probably still putting again together funds to be able to plow, was actually grabbed by invaders from outside, from other villages who just decided, look, this is an open piece of land, let's take it. So this argument of we don't have land is broken. We do have land. We just don't own it. We are given rights on our ancestral land and are not given ownership of that land. So I think that's something that they, members of the Youth League, the Swapo Youth League, who are the ruling party of the country, should be having such conversations saying that our people have land, but our people do not have ownership of the land. That's where the problem is. Trying to close down Mitco. Look, Mitco story is an interesting story. It seems like there has been a lot of wrong things happening at Mitco for a while. The fact that now they're bigger suppliers, which are mostly white commercial farmers, are either setting up their own or are leaving Mitco and going to go join other businesses or abattoirs that already exist. Savannah beef is coming, but it's not yet up. Beefco is one that's already operating. Many farmers are moving towards Beefco to supply Beefco with slaughter oxen, slaughter cattle, and so forth because they get better prices. Mitco issue, my opinion, there's been lots of mismanagement at Mitco for the longest of times. Yes, I know the previously advantaged people ran it in a certain way, we took over, but the problem of us, and this is the issue that I mentioned once in one of my previous video, I think my video that I shot on Thursday last week. I mentioned it that we also, when we take over our own parastatals, we must guard them and take care of these parastatals so they don't reach a point where they're being shut down. Bitco is another one. And Namibia, already gone, it's liquidated, it's dead. It's dead in the water. Transnamib stopped its trucking services because they couldn't anymore keep them going and focused on rail, which in my opinion doesn't make sense. So how are they trying to close down Mitco if we ourselves, when we take over these parastatals, we are unable to run and manage them properly? So I believe there is something we have to sit down and look at. We can point at them and say, you guys are the problem. Yes, they are part of the problem, but three fingers point back at us. Three fingers point back at us, the people we are appointing to be CEOs, chairpersons, managing directors of these parastatals. What are they doing? How are we holding them accountable that these parastatals of ours don't break tomorrow or the next day? Black farmers are unable to sell cattle to Mitco because of the veterinary corridor. Well, from what I know is Mitco tried to establish various abattoirs in the region. What many black farmers have an issue with Mitco, particularly where I'm from, the Zambezi region. Our problem with the meat corporation is we have studied that the pricing of meat in the northern part of the country and the pricing of meat in the southern part of the country is totally different. They pay better prices here than what they pay us in the northern part of the country. The northern part of the country, the meat grading is always a C grading, while this side, farmers are getting either an A grading or a B plus grading, while in the northern part we get C, and that means we get less money. It is not that. We can sell to Mitco. The problem we have is, particularly for some farmers who are in an area where there is probably not a local abattoir, the issue we have is the veterinary corridor prevents livestock farmers from selling their cattle to other private abattoirs. For example, Beefco has its abattoir here in Okahanja. If you want to be a Beefco client and you are up in the northern part of the country, let's say you're in the northeast, the Zambezi region, you can't be a Beefco client because Beefco doesn't have a slaughterhouse in that area. So the veterinary corridor prevents us through its own policies. But yet again, the ruling party, Swapo, which is Swapo, they had an opportunity when we obtained independence to have drawn a plan that is feasible, a plan that we can work towards to the removal of the red line of the veterinary corridor. So all livestock farmers could be able to be players in the meat industry, where I could go farm in Katima, and if I have my 10 slaughter oxen and the abattoir local and the local butcheries don't offer me a good price, I can load them on a truck, drive them to Grootfontein and get a better price. But they didn't do that. They came in, they found the red line there, they were told, let's leave the red line there for X, Y, and Z reasons. They left it. But now you come and say, black farmers are unable to sell cattle to Mitco because of the veterinary corridor, which is a fallacy. Because Mitco has abattoirs within our regions, but we're not getting a good pay, we're not getting a good grading, and we're not getting good pay for our cattle. And the pay takes long. The youth will start demanding land. This is very dangerous when you say the youth will start demanding land, because the question is this. For myself as a person who is originally from the northeast of the country, where do I go demand land? Do I come and demand land from a farmer who's sitting in Grootfontein? I'm not from the Grootfontein area. My land is in Zambezi, the Zambezi region, previously known as the Caprivi region. That is my land. If we take this route, let's say we go in, we demand land, and the previously advantaged groups leave, the land is there now. Who is going to own this land? Because amongst ourselves, and I mentioned this, amongst ourselves as black people, as much as we can complain of racism, we also have our own issues. Tribalism is one. Right now, with the resettlement policy of the country, there are certain groups saying that why is it that people who are not previously disadvantaged, or people who are not, let me say, previously dispossessed people, or people who are not from the central part and the eastern part of this country, why are they getting farms in the central, eastern, and northern part of the country? If you are from a region like Zambezi region, why are you getting a farm in Grootfontein? We, the people of this area, should be getting land. And that is what some of my Overherero friends told me. So we should be very careful with this. Which land are we going to demand? I can go demand my land in my communal area, where I am from. I can go and demand the land from the state and tell the state, give me ownership of my ancestral land, so I can be able to do something with my ancestral land. Because at this point in time, I'm poor. Not because I'm lazy, not because I'm stupid. I have land, but I can't take that land and go to a bank and go get a loan. I can't even utilize that land as collateral to buy a house. I can't utilize it as collateral to start up a business. I am poor because you guys hold the land. This is why I am 110% against state owning land. It shouldn't be. The land must be owned by the people. The rightful owners of the land should own the land, not a government. That should not be. He said a couple more things, man. He said establishing a private meat supplying company is an attempt to kill Mitco. Like I said, Namibia is a mixed economy society, meaning we have socialism policies, we have capitalism policies. The capitalism policy means it's free market. Any person is allowed to set up whatever business he wants. Just like how in the fishing industry, you find that there is the state-owned fishing industry, companies, and then there is the private industries. State needs to be able to compete with private. If it means state must either improve or pay its people better so they don't jump ship and go to the private side, then they should do that. You can't stop business people who have the funds through whatever means, whether yes, they're trying to kill Mitko or not. We can't stop businesses from coming into play because we run on a mixed economy whereby government can run a certain sector, but if I feel like I can offer a better service than what government is doing in that sector, I can come in. This is why we have, like I said, you have Midco, which is the state-owned one, and then you have Beefco, which is the private one, because we run on those policies. Black sellouts being used as a front for the real owners of the company. This is quite funny. It's quite funny he said this, because you would find out that most of the so-called black sellouts are usually politicians. They're usually politicians. They are the ones who usually partner with foreign international companies to do business with them. And they are the ones. It's usually politicians. But then on the end of the day, again, what's wrong with me doing business with a German? What's wrong with me being in partnership with the Chinese? What's wrong with me being in partnership with a Russian businessman? What's wrong with that? They can't come point fingers because, like I said, the biggest, if I have to say, the biggest black sellouts are usually the politicians. They're usually the ones signing under the table deals with multinational companies. This is why some multinational companies come and operate in our space unimposed and just do as they please. The land is ours and not theirs. True, the land is ours, but well, what land are we talking about here? Because we've moved to a point whereby now we've started incorporating laws. A farm is not mine, it's Mr. Van Tonde's farm or Mr. Van Veek's farm. It's his farm, he owns it, he has title deeds, he has proof of ownership of land, and he bought the land. I don't have that. I can't claim, because if I'm going to claim this land, and the court asks me, what evidence do I have that this land belongs to me? If my grandparents, my ancestors didn't write it down, it's a problem. But yes, the Namibian land belongs to all of us who live in this country, and that's a conversation we should have. The land belongs to us, it's our land. But what I'm saying is, as a person in the agricultural sector, what land are we talking about? Because if we're talking about farming land, we need to be very careful. Because if we're just going to take land from every previously advantaged person and give it to previously disadvantaged people, what are the guarantees that these people can actually do the farming? Should be very careful of that. Black people are not poor because they cannot think, but they don't have land. Like I mentioned, we have the land. The state owns the land. If you look at another article that has been going on in Namibia for a while, has been the drilling of looking for gas in the Kavango by Recon Africa. That has been an issue because like I said, like the Recon Africa situation, it's my ancestral land. This is where my grandparents and my people have been buried for hundreds of years. But I don't own the land. The land is owned by government, which means that if there is suspicion of a mineral being underground, government can come in and say, hey, we are thinking there's minerals underground here. So what I think we're going to do is we are going to take over this land and we're going to relocate you. You don't have any ownership. That's why we are poor. It's not that we don't have land. We have land. We just don't own the land because our government, our ruling party that is governing the country is running on a socialist policy by saying that we, the state, own all land in Namibia and that the people should apply for rights through us, through the indigenous leaders, to utilize. You can utilize, you cannot use it. Right now in the Zambezi region, as I'm speaking to you, the land that we own, our land, only land we're allowed to fence off is our cropland. But the rest of the land is open, which means even if it is my forest, if let's say this section of the forest is mine, or the forest is in cognizance of the land of my ancestors, everyone's cattle can come in there, can graze there, can drink the lake that is there, and can utilize the things that I've built because I don't own it. It is state-owned land. So that's where the problems come in. It's not that black people are poor because we don't have land. Black people are poor because we have the land, but we're not allowed to own it. It is like you're renting a house. You live in the house, but you're not allowed to own it. That's where our problem comes in. So I do agree with him on certain things, but I disagree with him on many points. Is that, like the Red Line, for example, the ruling party has been in government for 32 years. They should have worked around how to get rid of the red line, or what are they going to do in place to make sure that every livestock farmer can benefit. They should have worked on a policy to say, how do we empower the communal land farmers? Do we give them land ownership or do we give them land rights? Do we go to banks and tell our commercial and our private banks that, listen, be able to give a loan to this person because of his communal land he has? Right now, as I speak to you, we have land. We have so much land in the Zambezi, but I can't utilize that land to buy even a tractor or to buy a vehicle. I need to own a house. And now I need to go and bother my relative, or I need to bother my mom, or bother my dad, or bother my friend for him to be kind enough to say, listen, you can utilize my house as collateral for your loan, which is quite crazy. So these are the type of things we need to look at, honestly, and we need to be very careful. Like I said, if we grab the land as Namibians, after we've grabbed this land, people are going to turn around and are going to say, okay, we've grabbed the land from the previously advantaged people, but who claims this land? And then you're going to have the various different Namibian tribes, particularly these tribes that are from this, as I said, from Tsumeb coming downwards all the way to the South African border. The tribes that were originally here will say, this is our land. And then on top of that, we also have the San people, which are the original owners of Namibia. They own most of Southern Africa. They're the original owners. So we should be very careful when we make such statements, because you need to remember that as much as we are dealing with, for example, previously advantaged groups, they're probably the enemy. We also have to deal amongst ourselves, as I mentioned in my last videos. We have our own tribal issues amongst ourselves. So that's what I have to say on this, man. That's what I have to say on this issue, on this topic. Good article, but I just feel like some of the blame that the youth league is passing on to other people, they need to pass it to themselves. They need to look at the ministry that is the leader of that department. They need to look at all the former people that they appointed to run that body, chairman, chairwoman, and board members and CEOs. What have they been doing at Mitco that has brought Mitco to this point where Mitco is about to collapse? Why would the minister himself be saying that Mitco is in the ICU? What are we supposed to be doing? That's the questions that they need to be asking, not trying to blame other people to say it's them. No, sometimes we need to look at ourselves. And yes, I do agree that sometimes certain previously advantaged groups play in these things because some of them want to see us not succeed. But we also need to sit down and have a hard look at ourselves and tell ourselves that we are also not doing the best. We are also the problem. We need to look at ourselves and we need to say, what are we going to do that's going to improve the situation at Mitco? That's going to make sure that we safeguard Mitco, that Mitco becomes a maker of generational wealth for both white and black people. But in this case, we get in there, most of the time we get in there and we end up destroying our own parastatals. Then later on, we pass the buck, and we pass the blame and we say, these previously advantaged groups. So that's all I have to say in conclusion. Good article, but I feel like some of the blame is busy targeting the wrong group and he needs to target us. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I just have to say bye for now.